To this day, Israelis like talking dugri, an Arabic Turkish word which means talking straight and honestly. When Israelis talk dugri, there's little posturing or gamemanship. Talking dugri is the opposite of subtle. It means speaking in a thorny, sabra style. Talking dugri means you know where you stand. Whereas some cultures tolerate or encourage uncertainty and ambiguity, most Israelis don't. A tactful expression such as,
"This proposal sounds interesting," confuses Israelis. Israeli style is blunt. "This proposal won't work." Rarely do Israelis soften sentences with phrases like, "Perhaps you might consider," or "if you wouldn't mind." Instead, they just say, "You're wrong."
Hebrew itself is extremely concise. A 4-word Hebrew proverb becomes 16 words when it's translated into English. Israelis often speak English like their Hebrew, terse, economical, and explicit. Although many English speakers admired the eloquent speeches the late Abba Eban made when he was Israeli UN ambassador, many Israelis criticized his rhetorical flair and high-sounding language. He was, of course, educated at Cambridge rather than at the Technion.
No, we have to skip chapters because there's a lot of good stuff in this book. So we're sort of highlighting some other aspects of Israeli culture.
Do you want to read the main one now?
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I'll read that underline.
Okay. We like sharing. The story of Mizrahi, which means east in Hebrew, Jews, is a seldom told part of modern Jewish history. With the rise of Arab and Islamic nationalism in the 1940s, anti-Jewish violence swept through parts of the Middle East and North Africa, where Jews had lived for alternating periods of peace and persecution for more than 20 centuries. Synagogues, homes, shops, and schools were burned or looted, Jewish property confiscated. Thousands of Jews were arrested and killed. From 1948 through the 1960s, 870,000 Mizrahi Jews fled Yemen, Iraq, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Iran, and Afghanistan. More than 600,000 refugees came to Israel. Some left huts, others left villas. Silversmiths left shops in Casablanca, doctors left hospitals in Damascus, entrepreneurs closed movie theaters in Cairo. Writers, scholars, political and judicial leaders also gave up careers. But whatever their circumstances in the indigenous Jewish communities where they left behind, many which predate more than 1,000 years the 7th century Arab-Muslim conquest, most arrived in Israel destitute. Today, small Jewish communities remain in Yemen, Egypt, Syria, Morocco, Tunisia, and Lebanon. There are 4 Jews left in Iraq. Iran, one of the largest surviving Mizrahi Jewish communities outside of Israel, has about 30,000 Jews. By 1951, refugees in transit camps were overwhelmingly from the Middle East and North Africa. Most were religious and rarely had known a secular Ashkenazim, especially the shameless women who had naked legs and wore sleeveless dresses, who worked alongside men and even bossed them. They had crazy socialist ideas and ate unappetizing foods like schnitzel and black Russian bread. They had no taste for couscous or kube. Their accents didn't even sound like real Hebrew, and their prayers and melodies sounded harsh and foreign. They didn't eat corn or rice on Passover. Even worse, most of these Mizrahim did not observe the Sabbath. Similarly, few Ashkenazim had ever met a Mizrahi Jew. Suddenly, there were Jews that resembled Arabs and shared their tastes in food and music. How can they listen to an Egyptian singer and not Mozart? There were cross-culturally insensitive officials who thought to transform them into models of themselves, secular, socialist Ashkenazi Israelis. Some adults were stripped of unpronounceable Arab and Persian names and given Hebrew names. To look more like secular Ashkenazim, some Yemenite children had their side locks cut off. Whether they spoke Kurdish or Farsi or Arabic, what many Mizrahi newcomers shared was being stereotyped and misunderstood. How could they be Jews if they didn't speak Yiddish, Golda Meir wondered in 1964. Like her, many veteran Israelis knew little about their newcomers' rich, varied cultures and religious traditions. According to the author Tom Segev,
in the 50s, some Hebrew University professors were so worried about the ethnic problem, they argued that the only way to rescue these Arab Jews from backwardness was with strong infusion of European cultural values. It was degrading for my family, recalls Sammy Shmua, an urban, world-renowned sociologist at the University of Haifa, who spent his boyhood in a Jerusalem shantytown camp. We were told not to speak Arabic, but we didn't know Hebrew. Everything was strange. My father went from being a railroad official in Baghdad to an unskilled nobody. We suffered a terrible loss of identity. Looking back, I'd call it cultural repression. Behind their lofty ideals of, quote, one people, they were acting superior and paternalistic.
The Smuha family was part of the oldest Jewish community in the world outside of Israel itself. Iraq, the Babylon of the Bible and the Talmud, was the Jews' first land of exile, and after the destruction of the first temple in 586 BC, many Islamic countries, Iraq Jews held key roles in public and cultural life. There was a Jewish finance minister and a Jewish deputy president of the Supreme Court until the pogrom of 1941, instigated by pro-Nazi Iraqis, in which 137 Jews were killed, hundreds injured, and thousands of homes and shops destroyed. But then, with the establishment of Israel, Zionism became a capital crime. In Baghdad, which was nearly a quarter Jewish, cheering crowds gathered to see Jews hanged in the central square. The Iraqi government nationalized Jewish property and jailed or killed hundreds of Jews. Nearly all of Iraq's 150,000 Jews had escaped to Israel by 1951. Unlike many other Mizrahi Jews, refugees from Iraq soon made their way out of the transit camps to Tel Aviv and other desirable towns in central Israel.
The junior high history textbooks used between 1948 until 1967 described Mizrahim as apathetic, primitive, and backward people who did not like to work.
Continues Professor Smuha, who is an expert in Israeli pluralism. The irony is that Mizrahi Jews were largely urban, from cities like Baghdad, Damascus, Alexandria, Casablanca, and Beirut, more sophisticated than the desolate Eastern European shtetls, Yiddish for villages. So that's the Mizrahi, and a little bit more about them. I think they're fun. Yossi was 6 when his family left a small Berber village in southern Morocco and immigrated to Israel in 1969.
As a child, I dreamed of looking like a real Sabra with light skin. I was ashamed when people on the bus heard my parents talking Moroccan Arabic. Now I'm very ashamed of my shame.
Sent to a vocational boarding school for mostly Mizrahi bad boys with low intellectual capabilities, he received bad marks in math and English and thought he was stupid.
I didn't believe in myself, so I dropped out, he says. When I was drafted, someone mistakenly wrote that I passed the matriculation exam for English, so I was sent to train as an intelligence officer. That's when I changed my name from Ohana to Hetz to block out my Mizrahi identity. After the army, when I saw my soldiers going to university to study subjects like economics and law, I realized what education means. At 24, I went back to high school.
By age 30, Yossi had his BA and MA degrees in history and political science.
My Mizrahi consciousness emerged slowly. About the time my 4th child was born, I changed my name back to Ohana. I did it even though giving my kids a Mizrahi name means they'll probably have a harder life, but I need to reclaim my Mizrahi identity. It's important that the kids I work with see that educated people also have Mizrahi names. Being Israeli does not mean being Ashkenazi. It took me a long time to learn that. The solution is to invest in education, show kids the job possibilities. Intel volunteers teach math, art, and technology to thousands of students and run science summer camps. We donate hundreds of computers to the schools and give the municipal library a computerized system.
That was Ahuva Marziano, a no-nonsense dynamo who runs Intel's community relations program in Kiryat Gat, which is also trying to narrow the achievement gap. As a child, she immigrated to Israel from Iran with her parents.
My father's a truck driver, and he pushed me to get an education.
With the help of financial aid, Ahuva got an MBA from Ben Gurion University.
Our influence will be felt in another few years if people have the patience.
The hermetically sealed clean room, larger than 2 football fields, is the heart of Intel Kiryat Gat. It's fanatically sanitized, thousands of times cleaner than a hospital's operating room, so no particle of dust can ruin the manufacture of the thin computer chips on top of silicon wafers, which are the brains of the world's computers. A group of wide-eyed local 16-year-olds and their teachers peer through a window, watching the clean room technicians who look like space aliens in airtight white bunny suits, blue booties and helmets, and monitor each wafer. These mostly Mizrahi children, many of whose parents are high school dropouts, are face to face with a different Israel.
Wow, these technicians make American salaries? Ask a turned-on student who wears his baseball cap backwards. How did I get hired? We needed skilled workers.
Their Intel guide, the daughter of Yemenite immigrants, tells them, if you study science and math and learn computers, your job possibilities will be exciting.
Yeah, but exciting can't pay the rent, sniffs a girl with a nose ring. After my mother was fired from Polgat, the clothing factory, she couldn't get a job here.
Intel has 2 hiring conditions that disqualify most of their parents. Employees must have passed the high school matriculation exam and speak some English.
We may not have a job for your mother, the guide says, but maybe we'll have one for you.
Sderot is the closest Israeli town to the Gaza border, only half a mile away. Tzva Adom! Tzva Adom! The warning sirens cry. Code red alerts. Only 15 seconds to run to cover before a missile hits. Even though he's only 9, Gabi Boro knows what to do.
Knows what to do.
Sorry, it's children. I'm a child, and so whenever children come. Okay.
If I have a house near me, even if it's a stranger, I run in without knocking. If there's no house, I run to a tree. And if there's no tree, I lie down on my stomach and cover my head.
6 missiles have hit his elementary school, emitting explosives, bullets, nails, and shrapnel. In 2007, during the worst attack, the children luckily weren't there. Their parents kept them home, striking against the government for not reinforcing enough classrooms in their rocket-ridden western Negev town. On the second day of the 2007-8 school year, a barrage of 9 rockets hit, one damaging a daycare filled with babies.
The 9 Hoods 3 rockets were a present from the start of the new school year. Islamic Jihad announced on its website. Frantic parents, already furious over the government's failure to protect them and their children from the near-daily rocket fire, pulled their children out of schools. 20 parents and children have been killed in this drought, including immigrants from Ethiopia and Uzbekistan.
Children are sleepless. They can't concentrate. Over 33% have post-traumatic stress syndrome, says psychologist Roni Berger. Rockets often hit when children are going to school, as a high school art history teacher. A rocket hit her classroom recently. The kids' lives are ruined. I'm not afraid, and I'm not angry. I'd like to be able to talk to the Palestinians in Gaza. We used to have regular contact with them, but no more. Our children know nothing about them, and they're afraid and angry. In Sderot City Hall, there's a room filled with hundreds of twisted metal parts of missiles launched by Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Fatah's Al-Qaeda Martyrs Brigades, with the dates that they hit painted on them. Palestinians have launched over 5,000 missiles from Gaza into Israel since 2001. Many have crashed into schools, apartments, synagogues. Algerian-born grandfather is walking to his car.
I heard the whistle of a Qasim overhead. It landed 2 meters from me, but didn't explode. My 5-year-old granddaughter, Adar, asked me to play with her in the safe room in my house.